Do you know the real weakness behind Israel Adesanya's losses? Or is it something most fans keep overlooking? What if the same flaw has followed him through every defeat, unchanged, uncorrected, and repeatedly exposed at the highest level? From being untouchable to suddenly vulnerable, the pattern raises serious questions. Is it his habit of backing straight to the cage under pressure, his low output in critical moments, or a deeper issue in adapting mid-fight? And now, after multiple consecutive losses, the biggest question stands. Are we witnessing the decline of a once dominant champion? Or is Israel Adesanya still an elite fighter capable of reclaiming his glory? Israel Adesanya's first professional and MMA loss comes against Jan Blachowicz at light heavyweight. In the context of that fight is critical to understanding the result. Moving up a division, Adesanya gives up natural size and grappling strength, and that becomes the defining factor. On the feet, he remains competitive early, using feints, low kicks, and distance control, but he struggles to create meaningful damage against a more patient opponent. The key shift happens in the championship rounds, begins to impose top control through takedowns. Adesanya's takedown defense initially holds, but once grounded, he offers little urgency to scramble back up. The fight turns into a positional battle where control time outweighs striking optics. This loss is not about getting outclassed striking-wise. It is about strategic miscalculation. The inability to adjust to the grappling threat and the lack of urgency off his back define why he loses a unanimous decision. The next loss comes against Alex Pereira in their first MMA meeting, and this one is far more technical and psychological. Adesanya is winning the fight for long stretches, controlling range, landing clean counters, and even hurting Pereira earlier. However, the finishing sequence exposes a recurring vulnerability: defensive lapses under pressure. In round 5, with the fight seemingly secured, Adesanya backs up toward the fence instead of circling out. Pereira applies calculated pressure, cutting off the cage and forcing exchanges in tight spaces. Adesanya's guard becomes too reactive rather than proactive, absorbing shots instead of evading them. Once Pereira lands clean, Adesanya fails to clinch effectively or reset distance. The referee stoppage comes after a barrage where Adesanya is visibly compromised. The key reason here is not skill disparity, but momentary defensive breakdown, combined with poor cage positioning at the worst possible time. His loss to Sean Strickland is one of the most surprising from a tactical standpoint. Adesanya enters as the superior striker on paper, yet he is outworked and outpressured across 5 rounds. Strickland establishes a simple but effective game: constant forward pressure, a tight guard, and a steady jab. Adesanya fails to make the necessary adjustments. He remains overly cautious, hesitant to commit combinations, and unable to disrupt Strickland's rhythm. The most telling moment comes early when Adesanya gets dropped, forcing him into a more conservative shell for the rest of the fight. Instead of recalibrating with angles, leg kicks, or increased output, he allows Strickland to dictate pace and positioning. The numbers reflect it. Strickland outlands him significantly. This loss is about passivity and failure to adapt. Adesanya does not get overwhelmed physically. He gets out-strategized and outworked over 25 minutes. Against Dricus du Plessis, the narrative shifts toward chaotic pressure and grappling transitions. Adesanya starts relatively composed, picking shots and managing distance, but du Plessis brings an unorthodox rhythm that disrupts timing. The striking exchanges are messy, yet effective for Du Plessis because they break Adesanya's usual control. The critical moments occur in grappling sequences where Du Plessis mixes takedowns with clinch work. Adesanya defends some attempts but fails to maintain consistent separation. By round 4, fatigue becomes evident, and Du Plessis capitalizes by securing a dominant position, leading to a rear naked choke. The loss highlights Adesanya's vulnerability against relentless, unconventional pressure, combined with grappling persistence. It is not clean technique that beats him here, but unpredictability and sustained physical engagement that prevents him from settling into his preferred striking rhythm. The defeat to Nassourdine Imavov is shorter but tactically revealing. The fight ends via knockout in round 2, and the key issue is defensive awareness during exchanges. Adesanya starts cautiously, but Imavov finds success with timing and speed. The finishing sequence comes from a clean punch that lands during a moment where Adesanya's guard is not fully set. This is a recurring theme. When pressured into exchanges rather than controlling them, his defensive reactions can lag. There is also a noticeable hesitation in initiating offense, which allows Imavov to dictate engagement terms. Once hurt, Adesanya does not effectively clinch or recover positioning, leading to a quick finish. This loss underscores a decline in reaction sharpness and an increasing susceptibility to well-timed counters, especially from fighters willing to engage decisively. The most recent loss to Joe Pyfer further compounds these patterns while introducing new concerns. Statistically, the fight shows limited offensive output from Adesanya and effective aggression from Pyfer. Pyfer lands more significant strikes and mixes in grappling attempts, keeping Adesanya on the defensive. The decisive moment comes in round 2, where Pyfer secures a knockout through punches. Leading up to the finish, Adesanya struggles to establish distance control, which has historically been his strongest asset. Pyfer pressures forward without overcommitting, forcing Adesanya into reactive movement rather than calculated positioning. When exchanges happen, Pyfer's power and directness outweigh Adesanya's more measured approach. The knockout sequence reflects compromised defense under pressure. Adesanya absorbs shots without successfully evading or countering. This loss is particularly significant because it shows a trend: decreased output, diminished control over range, and increasing vulnerability to aggressive, confident opponents. Across these 6 losses, the consistent themes become clear. Against larger opponents like Błachowicz, grappling and physicality neutralize him. Against elite strikers like Pereira, momentary defensive lapses cost him fights he is otherwise winning. Against pressure fighters like Strickland and Du Plessis, his inability to adjust to relentless forward movement limits his effectiveness. And in his most recent losses to Imavov and Pyfer, there is a noticeable decline in reaction time, output, and defensive sharpness. Each loss is different in method: decision, knockout, submission. But they collectively highlight evolving challenges in Adesanya's game as opponents adapt and exploit specific weaknesses.